We're looking at the DJI MINI 4 Pro and the best settings to get you started making professional aerial content. So if you didn't catch my full review of the Mini 4 Pro, I'll pop links in the description where I pretty much cover all that this little drone has to offer. But if you've purchased or thinking about buying one of these little beauties, then the Mini 4 Pro is a great place to start. It has tons of professional features, but how do we harness all of the power inside the drone? Let's find out. But before we take to the sky, let's first look at some important settings to get you started. The three small dots in the top right corner is where we can set some of the parameters for the camera and the drone. In the safety section, I would recommend using bypass in the obstacle avoidance system. This is where the drone will automatically detect objects and fly around them while you're using the joysticks. The normal mode will give you added protection as opposed to the nifty mode, which gives you a smoother ride, but with increased risk of collision. So let's hop over control straight onto camera settings. And this is where you're going to get the most out of your footage by choosing the best settings for you personally. Now, the normal color mode will probably get you the best overall quality footage if you don't know how to color grade in a video editor. I'm currently filming this on normal H.265. However, if you want to get the best possible quality footage and attempt some professional color grading, then go with the D-Log M color mode and stick around till the end of this video where I'm going to show you how to color grade properly using DaVinci Resolve, which is a fantastic free video editor. Next, I would keep the color display assist on, as log footage can look washed out, and what this does is grade the footage in the controller to look more like the normal color mode. And we don't need to worry about any of these other parameters just yet. Next, down in the bottom right corner is where you're going to see all of your exposure settings. And if you're just starting out and you want to concentrate on the flying and just get some basic footage, then I'd leave this in auto, which is this little symbol right in the corner. Now, tapping on the resolution and frames per second will give you these items. By default, I have mine set to 4K and 30 frames per second. A lot of content creators would opt for 25 frames per second, but I find 30 gives you slightly smoother footage while maintaining a cinematic quality. Now, higher frame rates like 60 frames per second should be used with slow motion in mind. For instance, you can film at 60 frames per second and get regular footage. However, you can also slow it down by 50% and get that slow motion effect. Now, I wouldn't worry too much about exposure compensation, but should you think that the exposure is under or overexposed, you can use this slider to just bring up the footage. Now, if you're feeling confident and know a little more about exposure settings, then let's try changing auto to manual, where we'll be given more professional options. Over on the left-hand side, we have our frame rates and resolution, currently filming in 4K and 30 frames per second, in our D-Log M color mode with the color display assist and H.265. Then we have the shutter and ISO, which is the business end of getting quality footage. ISO deals with the sensitivity of the sensor. Higher ISOs should be reserved for shooting it in darker conditions like nighttime or twilight. During the day, however, I'd stick with 100 or 200. Now, your shutter speed is where we're going to achieve good exposure, and I would suggest using a live histogram to help you with this. So if we head up to our camera parameters and scroll down, you will see a histogram. If we switch that on, now we have this little histogram window here. And if we change the shutter speed, you will see the graph changing accordingly. As a general rule, we want to aim to get that histogram fairly even in the middle. Blacks are on the left-hand side and whites are on the right. If you aim to get the histogram in the middle, then you're not going to go too far wrong. I'm currently shooting at 1/1600th of a second. I could probably get away with 1250. I'm currently filming at 1/1250th of a second, which is giving us pretty decent exposure. However, ideally, we want the shutter to be way slower than this because of what's called the 180-degree rule in videography, meaning that the shutter should be double the frame rate. I'm filming at 30 frames per second, so the shutter should ideally be 60th of a second. And how do we achieve this? By using an ND filter pack, which is designed specifically for the Mini 4 Pro. And what these are basically sunglasses for your drone. They reduce the amount of light hitting the sensor, thus allowing us to achieve slower shutter speeds. Here's a little guide to helping you choose the correct ND filter. I've just popped on an ND16, which is giving us 60th of a second at 30 frames per second. Perfect exposure, histogram looks good. It's time to start flying. So how we capture all of this lovely 4K footage is by tapping on the film icon and make sure we're set to normal. Focus I would leave in automatic, as autofocus is really good on the Mini 4 Pro. And then it's time to start recording, either by pressing the red button here, or we press the red button on the top there. Now tapping on 1x will zoom in, oh there we go, to 2x, and tapping again will take you to 3x. So if you want to achieve dynamic content where the drone performs automatic flights like following a human or a car, then intelligent flight mode is where you're going to get some of the best results, and it's really simple to do. Draw a rectangle around the subject and the drone will lock onto you and open up the options down below. By default, we have Spotlight, which is where the drone will follow you wherever you go, even inputs on the joystick. The camera will keep the subject center stage, which is why it's called Spotlight. Next, we have Point of Interest. This is quite similar to Spotlight, the only difference being that the drone will fly a circle around you while you're either moving or stationary. You can adjust the radius or the height during flight. Finally, one of the big selling features of the Mini 4 Pro is ActiveTrack 360, an upgrade over previous versions and currently only available on the Mini 4 Pro. Not even the Air or Mavic lineup offers this brilliant feature, although they probably will with future firmware updates. So let's activate it and start walking. By default, it's going to recognize the orientation of the human and follow from behind, indicated by this little arrow next to the letter B, which stands for behind. But things get even more intelligent when we use this new trace wheel. You can make inputs using your finger. What about if we want to take the drone to a high position? If we want to follow from the front side, it quickly changes its orientation to match where the human is. This is a major update over the previous Mini 3 Pro. And the reason for that is because we now have this impressive omnidirectional obstacle avoidance system, so it can detect obstacles to the side, front, back, up and down, basically in all directions. Now heading back into the two other items in the filming submenu are night mode and slow motion. And slow motion is going to take us into the Mini 4 Pro's newest frame rate of 100 frames per second, which is unprecedented on the Mini lineup. I have my shutter speed set to 200, which is double the frame rate, and ISO of 100. Now filming in this slow-mo mode will actually render the footage in 100 frames per second, meaning that if you play back the video file on your computer, it will play at slow motion speed. Remember, filming at 60 frames per second, we easily have the option to use this as regular or slow-mo footage. Now, night mode is a relatively new feature on the DJI drone lineup. Choosing this option adopts a multi-scale noise reduction algorithm, giving us even cleaner, vibrant night shots with glorious 4K detail. And finally, not forgetting the true vertical filming mode, where you can click the C2 button on the back of the controller and you can create footage for those social media style contents. With true vertical filming, you don't have to crop in from a 16:9 piece of footage and ultimately lose valuable pixel information. We get to keep all of that glorious 4K resolution. As promised, here's a quick look at how we perform basic color grading to some D-Log-M footage. Using DaVinci Resolve, of which there is a free version, heading over to the color grading panel, we can see we have our clip, a histogram down here, and some color wheels and adjustments on the left. A simple way to restore D-Log-M footage is by heading into the RGB mixer and boosting the red, green, and blue channels. And already that's brought some color back into the clip. A quick before and after. Next, if we open up the primary color wheels, the lift wheel handles the shadows, gamma the midtones, and gain the highlights. Over on the histogram, we can see that there is room for improvement in the blacks and shadow areas of the clip. So grabbing the lift slider, we can bring back some contrast in those areas. Now we're getting somewhere. Next, we can reduce some of the highlights in the sky using, you've guessed it,
highlights. There looks good. And let's color grade the shadows using the color wheel and bring some blues in. Perhaps a lift in the shadows. And if you're feeling adventurous, we can add a new node by hitting Option S on the keyboard, and let's add a gradient mask over the sky. Cover the area and simply head into curves and pull the curve down, and Bob's your uncle. 3 or 4 simple ways to grade your D-Log M footage in about 2 minutes and really bring your aerial content to life.